Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. Today is Monday, October 6th, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about over the weekend. My name is Chelsea Leite, and I am joined by Brittany Carper, and we are going to break down the first two games of the WNBA Finals between the Las Vegas Aces and the Phoenix Mercury, but also talk about maybe one of the most highly anticipated events of the weekend, which was Cathy Engelbert's press conference ahead of the finals. So welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to do so. But thank you for listening on this Monday. So let's get into, there's no preamble to go into it. Like, we're just going to get into all of the drama from this weekend. I mean, if you have been keeping up with the WNBA in the past week, it's been pretty wild. It kind of started, this whole kind of cycle started with the Minnesota Lynx series with the Phoenix Mercury last week. There were some questionable calls. Cheryl Reeve got ejected, kind of went off on her presser, gets fined and suspended. The Lynx lose their game. Napheesa Collier then comes out and has this very prepared statement about the WNBA and Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner, and all of this various stuff regarding the CBA negotiations and where they are. And then so the anticipation up to this finals press conference was very high. I do want to say that Cathy Engelbert does one of these before every finals, before big events, before the season start. Like, most of the time when there's like a big WNBA event, Cathy Engelbert will have one of these press conferences. So it's not like they called it in retaliation of all of these events. So yeah, we're going to get into all of that. I will say, like, the funny context of this podcast today is that obviously, like, Brittany is the well-informed person here today. I had like a very pre-planned 6 months ago friends trip that I went on, and so like I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and keep as informed as possible without being able to watch. And so this morning I was just like catching up on everything that I could from social media, from transcripts, from the presser, looking at game highlights, box scores, all of this stuff. And so Brittany has the perspective of someone who actually watched this stuff, and I have the perspective of someone who box score hopped through all of this. And so yeah, we're gonna go back and forth on our thoughts on that. I mean, it's not like any of these things that, whether it happened in the actual game or Cathy, it's not like an isolated incident of this week. It's things that have been building towards, or the way that these two teams have played all year. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But we're going to start with the Cathy Engelbert press conference, because that was Friday and we haven't had a podcast since then. So it's important to get into it. Cathy Engelbert kind of started her press conference, as always, with like a prepared statement that she has, kind of just talking about state of the league, this incident, all of that. And then she goes into a question and answer. I don't think it was very long in total. I mean, it was only about 23 minutes, which, given a press conference after something like this, to me is a little short, but the league was going to keep it to what they wanted to keep it. So, so let's talk first about a few of the things that she said in that first prepared statement, which were that they're creating a task force for the WNBA and stakeholders and players. And here, let me grab the name of it, because it was kind of funny. I laughed at it. Trying to roll up in these transcripts here. Okay. It is
I don't
called,
have it off the top of my head either. So
I know. Okay. No, where is this task force? I'm like trying to go through these. It's like the game something. It's like a very like. Wow, this is BMAC. Help me out here. So they are coming up with this transcript. I'm going to ask BMAC to see if he can find the name of it.
Yeah.
And put it in our chat, so I'm not just aimlessly scrolling here while we're recording. But yeah, so they're coming up with this task force. The idea of the task force is that they're going to bring players, like maybe officials, maybe owners, she called them stakeholders, people with stake in the league, and try and figure out how we grow the game without without it being detrimental to the game, the whole thing. And then she was just kind of talking about the statements that were made by Napheesa Collier. She was talking about, oh, okay. So he says it's called the Multi-Stakeholder Task Force. Sure. All right.
Basically, anyone who has an investment in the league or a presence, probably.
A presence in the league. Yeah. So that was kind of, so let's start with the statement, Brittany. Like, what messaging did you get from Cathy from her opening of that press conference? The first time she's talked, other than that prepared, like, written statement.
Yeah, I don't think she really went too far off of that in terms of probably what people really wanted to hear. And I know that first question to her was a little bit more in depth about, the players should be on their knees, thankful for the league. And to be honest, she really didn't answer that question. She kind of evaded it with, just some talk about how the week has been hard for her, and assuming obviously bringing in her children as well, and we all understand that, and but really didn't get a lot of answers from that. But I think this statement as a whole was kind of what you expected. Just she's, they're working to come to an agreement for the CBA, knows there's some things in the game that need to grow forward with the league, talked about the growth of the league. But other than that, I thought it wasn't real in depth. So that's where kind of the question and answers push the envelope a little bit further there.
Yeah, I will say, like, Cathy's background is very businessy. She is, a girl boss, if you may. And so her jargon, she's very good at like saying a lot of words without really making an opinionated statement. And so, I mean, I expected, knowing how she talks, for her to come in and just kind of say these very vague, very like blanket statements of, we need change, we need, we need to, business this, business that, players, we like, we appreciate the players, but blah blah blah. I did appreciate, and obviously this is our role as like media and journalists, etc., is to immediately ask like the very specific question of, okay, but what about what Nafisa said, and specifically the comments about players being on their knees thanking you, et cetera, et cetera. And she didn't, she did end up, and we'll get to this, but she did end up denying what she said about Caitlin Clark, but she did not deny what she said about the players and literally anything else Nafisa Collier quoted her on. And instead, she blamed it on like clickbait and like the social media aspect of people just taking stuff and inflating it. And it's funny because you and I were kind of talking about this before we hit record, but like, I feel like for that social media statement to be true, it would have needed to be more like reported on rumors. But like, this was something that Nafisa Collier got in front of a camera on a microphone and said quote by quote. And so it's not like anybody's taking any rumors out of context. We're looking at the video and taking quotes from the video. And so her not outright denying what Nafisa said, other than the Caitlin Clark thing, honestly, I think was more of a indictment on what actually, like, that she probably actually said it.
Completely agree. And I think when you're in that position and you kind of just evade the answer, which she did, tells you all you need to know. But everything that's been out on social media since Nafisa's comment has been directly from the mouth of the players in this league. And so for her to say the inaccuracies out in the social media world is just funny, because you're then saying either they're lying or I mean, that was what was so odd to me, was there was no, I did not say that, besides the Caitlin comment. It was, inaccuracies being reported. But when we all have the videos and the clips directly from exit interviews of the players, it's hard to say that's inaccurate unless she is just directly saying they are lying to you. I will know in her statement, I didn't touch on this, but I did think it was, I guess good of her to acknowledge that there is a human element to the game, of the relationship part of it.
Yes.
Saying the league needs to be better, she needs to be better. Whether or not that is repairable at this point is, remains to be seen, because you can tell just with how much the players have talked out about that part. I don't know if it is. And then, really, besides that part of it and her denial, she really just touched on the CBA. And
Yeah.
the main ask from the players is the increase in salary and benefits. And she kept saying a rather large increase they are asking for in salary and benefits. But we don't know that number. We don't know how close they are to that. But then, towards the end, she said it has to make sense from both sides for the players to get the increase, and then for it to be incentivized for investors to keep investing in this league. And so I don't know how far away they are. She seemed to still be somewhat optimistic that October 31st could happen. I don't see a world in where that happens, but what are your kind of takes on the end of this, CBA talk that she mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, for her, I try as much as like we're fans of this. It's interesting because a lot of times when we talk about like union strikes, labor movements, it's about labor that people don't have a personal vested like interest in, like sports. Like I think about when we talk about like Canada's had a lot of postal strikes. So like postal strikes are a big thing, and like transit, and like, teach, and it's like we do have personal interest in the fact that like these services are part of our lives, but like people have a very different interest in sports and tend to talk about players and whatever in more of like a celebrity fan situation than they do as like a labor force kind of jargon, and so for me, I'm trying to really take out that aspect of it and really think about this as like a labor movement, which it technically is. Like I know a lot of people are going to say like, oh, but like they're playing basketball, and like I get that, but they are still a labor force, and this is still like we're talking about a union here. And so I'm trying to have that perspective on like, okay, what are like their needs are going to be very much in line with like their safety and their benefit, and them trying to get paid for the work that they are doing. And then on the other side, Cathy is always going to have a very business minded thing. And so she's always going to bring up the sustainability of the league, which has been a thing that players have mentioned. She's always going to bring up things like investors and, making sure that the WNBA can still run as a business. What I don't understand, and she hasn't really talked about much, is like the fact that the immense growth that we are seeing from the last CBA to this CBA. Like she's kind of talking like we're still in 2018, 2019, where like who knows if people are going to invest in women's sports. And like we're at the point now where we know people are investing in women's sports. We know businesses, we know people, we know media is investing in women's sports, and they just signed a huge media rights deal last year. And so I would love to hear either now or once, hopefully an eventual deal comes into fruition, like what the exact like points of these negotiations are. Do they not want to give them more of the revenue from the media rights deal? Is it, other stuff that they just like they're not thinking about, certain invest like it's interesting to me because like we've had so much growth, but yet I don't feel like Cathy's acknowledging that. And I do understand wanting to like be risk averse as a business person, but like at the same time, there's been so much, like they're talking about so much more investment now. So I don't know. It's just my perspective on her like CBA negotiations. I think she is very much being PR scripted in terms of what she's saying about the CBA negotiations. Whether or not she actually thinks that October 31st is a reasonable deadline, we're not going to know because she's not going to publicize that, and they're just going to spin the idea that everything's going great and we're doing the best we can and we're giving them what we think is a great offer, but what they think is a great offer is likely not a great offer, knowing what we know about these kind of like business operations.
Yeah, it's so hard to speculate
Mhm.
because we don't know, but I think you're right. Like she is maybe framing it from a past perspective, but like you said, the valuation of these franchises has skyrocketed, and the investment in women's sports has just been incredible. And I think if you even look to like the pipeline of who is coming into the WNBA, that isn't going to stunt the growth of the league. You have college players that are household names.
Yep.
More eyes are on the sport. There are more access. I mean, you just saw the women's Final Four in Indy upgrade to Lucas Oil Stadium. Another
Yeah.
13,000 fans can go to that game. And so you're seeing like even 2 years out on the NCAA side, they are preparing for that. They understand where the game is at, where it is going. And I think that's what the fight from the players is about. It's because they have the eyes to the future. They understand where the game is at, where
Mm-hmm.
all the franchises are, and where the league is. And so I do think it is hard because the business numbers, I don't know. I can't figure all those things out, but we're looking at it from a perspective of we've seen the growth. And, I think it's silly to think the league isn't sustainable without increasing the players' salaries and their benefits to a point where they feel like it is feasible for them. I mean, for rookies to be making what they make in this league, and, again, the stars that have come into this league over the last 3 years even is just it's really phenomenal, and it's going to continue that way. And so I think from our perspective, it's hard not to understand why it is so hard to negotiate a number that seems feasible for both sides. But I really hope that it's something that they can come to an agreement on, because again, like, the product of this league is better than it ever has been. And the stunting of it, I don't want to see happen, but I also know it's such a pivotal time for these women to fight for what they deserve.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was what I wanted to touch on in this conversation too, is the fact that I think we're talking about, possibilities of strikes, of lockouts, etc. And I think, as I agree with the fact that it would be like a stunt to the growth. Like, I don't think a work stoppage isn't good for anyone. Like, as much as we talk about, we want the players to make a stand and fight, and sometimes a work stoppage is necessary for that, to show the league that, like, you can't run this league without us. And I understand that, but I don't think the players want a work stoppage. I don't think the league wants a work stoppage. The advertisers certainly don't want a work stoppage. The fans don't want a work stoppage. The people like us who work within this league, like, the media side of it, doesn't want a work stoppage, because that also directly impacts our work. It directly impacts the staffs of the teams, the staffs of the league. It's a lot. Like, it's not just the players striking. It is a very big deal to go to a work stoppage. But at the same time, it's like it comes to a point where these players may need to say, hey, you cannot do this without us and without our like, we are the product. And if the league isn't seeing that, then something needs to give. And it's like interesting, the fact that we've had all of this growth and we're having all of this investment, and they still can't see. And I think it's such like a window into that world that I'm definitely not used to, because I am in a different social class / financial class of that, where I've never had to deal with that side of like business and like money and all of that sort of stuff. But it's interesting for me, as someone on like this side of it, who has always kind of been on like the union worker side of strikes and etc. But like being like, out of every strike that I've ever witnessed in my life, like, this might be the one where there's so much public evidence of what the workers deserve. And like, it's so interesting that that's still not doing it.
Right. Yeah. And so I really hope that somehow they are able to come to an agreement, because I think the league is worth the investment. And I
Mhm.
think that's another thing that really, because when people started to invest in women's sports is when you saw the growth happen,
Mhm.
right? I
Exactly.
mean, and so that's what's frustrating, I think, especially as two females. Like, we've always known what women's sports have been about, and
Yeah.
now when you see the investment and you see the growth and the rise in popularity, for us it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
we've known it. So I really hope that like some kind of a light switch is flipped, and they can understand what exactly is at stake here.
Yeah. Two last things I want to get into about Cathy's presser before we move on to the actual basketball of the weekend is, first of all, someone asked about the Connecticut Suns sale in her presser, which I thought obviously was a great time to ask about that. There's been a lot of noise about that, about how the league might be trying to like kind of finagle this sale from the Mohegan tribe and kind of give them a bad deal when it comes to whether or not they approve the sale. Someone did ask like, what's going on with the Connecticut Sun sale, and she just very much was like, they're updating us and trying to figure out what their best move is.
Yeah, they were like trying to see if they want to be the, major stakeholders, sell, become minority.
Yeah.
Very, again, vague, not a lot of clarity for us as
Yeah.
people who are kind of interested in what direction that goes. So we didn't get a lot of answers. I
Nope.
think probably, again, you hate to say that, not at the forefront of a lot of what she's doing right now.
Yeah.
But again, a major part of the league. So you want to, certainly from our perspective, want to, see what is going to happen there. But it was a very vague answer.
Yeah, the other thing that I enjoyed in terms of what people were asking was there was a report that came out that said that Cathy likely wouldn't stay on as commissioner once these negotiations were done. Someone flat out asked, they're like, "Hey, you plan on like resigning? Like, what's the vibe?" And she went on to what I think may be the most like girl boss quote of the entire thing, where she went on this thing where she's like, "I'm not a quitter. I don't quit. I've been working for 40 years and I don't quit." And it's just like that part I think made me laugh more than anything, because it's like, yeah, you're not quitting, we're like actually you're getting kicked out. Like, what's
Yeah,
like, it's just funny.
yeah. I was kind of surprised she didn't go back to her inaccuracies in the media world, but she kind of
Yeah,
did
she
mention
kind of
that.
did.
But yeah, I think she wasn't absolutely going to say anything like,
No,
"Yeah, I plan to be done," but kind of just went on how she is risen to the top in
cream of the
business,
crop or
cream of
whatever
the
the
crop, or yeah, however she
pre-rising to
worded
the
that.
top.
So yeah, I again was not surprised by that answer. I thought that's probably exactly what she was going to say.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm interested in, and then we'll move on to the stuff, is like how integrated, and I know that the league is owned by the NBA. Like, this isn't like a, whoa, I didn't realize this moment, but it's actually wild. Nafisa said this on a podcast, and this has kind of been like a little bit of a notion throughout these CBA negotiations. But the NBA kind of has a little bit of a say in this as well. And it seems like a lot of the pause in how much money the WNBA is willing to like share with the players has to do with the fact that the NBA is involved in it and kind of also gets a stake, obviously, as like the parent company of all of this. And so I'm super interested to hear like what they do to try and overcome that barrier when it comes to giving the players what they want, because as we know, the players are not going to settle.
Yeah, and someone did, I think, ask about Adam Silver being
Yes.
involved in any of the negotiations, and she basically just said she keeps him updated on what is happening, that he's been a great support for her, but in terms of actually, stepping in to help with any of it, it did not seem that that was happening at all. But yeah, that is kind of the hard part with the league, is being owned by NBA and mostly men, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
so I think that they're probably not wanting to give up more money because they don't think they need to, or whatever that may be. The reasoning behind the business model of that. But again, those are all layers of business and franchises and things that I don't invest my time in to really
exactly.
understand. But I do think that will be interesting, going forward, if you do hear more from Adam Silver with how, these negotiations end up coming when they come down to the wire, or if they are extended by a month or two, or if we're getting to a point where there is not going to be, a league, or wherever we're at with that, to see if he does become more involved.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, basically the gist of her whole thing was like girl boss gatekeep. Well, I forget what the third one is. Girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep. That's the three. She was given that energy. Very much like yapping without much sustenance. And then Nafisa Collier went and canceled their meeting after, which kind of shows the state of the relationship there. And I think the idea of Nafisa, it was kind of like, yeah, the relationship isn't really repairable here because of what she went on and said in this presser, or didn't say in this presser, and just kind of blamed it all on social media vitriol, which it was funny because most of the players speaking out, it was like their experiences of Cathy like not reaching out to them. Elena Deladon said that she doesn't think Cathy knows she's retired because she just like didn't say anything, which is hilarious. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of the Cathy Engelbert portion of the weekend. And then we moved on to actual basketball, which is what we were here for in the first place. And so we had game 1 and game 2 of the WNBA Finals this weekend, both in Las Vegas, 7-game series, which is super exciting. Vegas has won both, which I mean, okay, here's the thing for those who aren't used to watching 7-game series. In a situation where we go to 7 games, this isn't a like an unusual way to start the series. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, like Phoenix has a huge hole to dig themselves out of. Like this is going to be hard." And like maybe so, yes, but there it is not rare for the home team to win the first two, the other home team to win the second two, and then we head into that best of 3 kind of end of a 7-game series. And so game 1 was close against Vegas and Phoenix. In Phoenix, again, like I was score watching while it was happening, and at the end I was like, okay, this is really close. Lots of timeouts, lots of things. I think to me what stood out about game 1, and this is funny because I wrote about this last week and then I was proved correct, which I love when that happens. Dana Evans was huge in this game, scored I think 21 points off the bench. And like that was to me, I was like, okay, a big factor in this game is how the bench is going to come. And Dana Evans has shown little flashes. And like even when she played in Chicago, it was her rookie season. She didn't play that much in the WNBA playoffs, but when she did, I think she had really great moments of like being able to support this team off of the bench. And I mean, it's a great time for her to be scoring 21 points off the bench in the finals. Like good, amazing for her.
Yeah, she was really good. She was 5 of 6 from the 3. Just a really big piece off the bench for them. Jewel Lloyd was really good. And it was a night where, and Becky Hammon even said post game, she thought Asia and Jackie's legs were just kind of heavy in a game 1, which is expected for how the series went again against Indiana. Asia didn't have a completely horrible night, but Jackie only finished with 10, which was her postseason low. So they really needed that bench production. And to get that from those two pieces on a night when, Asia Wilson and Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray weren't doing the bulk of the scoring was definitely the game changer in my opinion. But the game as a whole was just really, really good. It was high level. There were a combined 23 made threes. It was back and forth. I kind of was telling you before we hopped on the switch in the second half, the Aces went zone, which I'm pretty sure they had not played up until that point of the season, but really kind of put Phoenix in questioning spots. They didn't take a lot of great shots. They became a little stagnant, so I thought that was kind of the big change on the defensive end that really kind of helped swing the game.
Yeah, that's so interesting thinking about them going zone as well, given I think Phoenix has a very unique team structure, which has kind of been the idea of like their story all year. You have Alyssa Thomas, who is this very unique player when it comes to how she operates, even in the way she shoots, the way she scores, the way she is physical. Then you also have Satu Sabali, who is again a little bit of a, jack of all trades, different player. Then you have Ka, who is someone who's very like long and can drive but can also shoot and is someone who demands a very specific defense. And so the idea that they just kind of like lock in on that and go zone when they haven't done that the entire season is, I think, a really bold move from Becky Hammon. But in this series where you're facing a team like Phoenix that can go on a run very quickly and kind of change the momentum of a game, sometimes you got to throw something different at them and throw them off, which I think is what happened in this situation.
Yeah, and we've seen it all postseason. That little point guard screen for AT in the middle of the floor, and when you go zone, it kind of takes that away. And so when Phoenix is at their best, I think on the offensive end is when she's initiating the offense. She gets into the paint, and the ball is sprayed around. Well, when you go zone, a lot of that is taken away. And then also we were talking before we hopped on is about the technical technical foul that Satu Sabali received. I believe at that time, Mercury were up 76-71. She fouled Asia Wilson, frustrated, slammed the ball. And that was kind of, I think the Aces might have went on like a 16-6 run. But even then, with all that being said, it was still tie game. We're down to one possession. Mercury are down one. AT gets fouled, misses 2 free throws, which I had talked about probably about a month ago on here. I always think that's kind of a chink in her armor. She's hit some big free throws in the playoffs, but when you're only a 60-some% free throw shooter in critical situations, it's just not something you can count on. And from a star player who is as physical as AT is, that's huge when it's not like an automatic 2. And not that anyone goes to the line and it's automatic in pressure situations. But when you're, at 60%, that's just not, you can't count on that. And so, but that even being said, Phoenix still had a chance to tie the game. I think they had about 12, 13 seconds left. And I know Tibbetts was asked in the post game if he would go back, and they still had a timeout. And so the initial action they ran, there was nothing there. Aces did a great job of switching. It forced Satu Sabali to take a really contested 3 that wasn't a great look. But he said if he would, had to do it over again, he would have probably tried to call timeout with 6 seconds left. But credit to the Aces for that defensive stand. But what I just enjoyed the game as a fan because it was high level basketball. There were so many made shots. And what I loved is what we talk about. It's a product, right? And so you kind of get through that week of all the drama that happens off the court. And then for all of us, we get to tune in and see what everyone loves about this league and this game. And we were treated to that in game 1.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. Like, yeah, product is number one. And like these players time and time again go out and prove that like the product is at a 10 out of 10 and show up in these big moments and have these big games. And this has been kind of like a talk over the past few seasons about the playoffs. Like we've had some great final series over the past like 5 years. Like they've just been so exciting, entertaining, high level basketball. Everybody's at their best. And it just makes it more fun because that like every single player is playing their best. They're competing against the best, and therefore whoever wins just like was able to overcome that. And so we headed into game 2 where which was yesterday, and obviously the Aces are going to want to win, go into Phoenix with a 2-0 lead. Phoenix's goal is to try and disrupt them, get on the board in terms of having a 1-1 series. And obviously, as we know now, that didn't exactly happen. So for you, like what did either team kind of change their strategy going into game 2? And what was the key to the Aces winning?
I really thought, obviously, Asia Wilson and Jackie Young were incredible. Jackie Young, I think ended up with 32 points. She had 21 in the third, but you watch them play and sometimes you wonder, like, are those two good enough to carry them to a win or a postseason, victory in the finals? And last night you just shake your head and you say, yes, absolutely they are, because they were that good. But what really happened, they started to make life kind of hard for Asia in the third quarter, and Jackie Young was able to get loose and really get any look she wanted. But I really thought the guards for the Aces were just so active defensively. They got their hands on so many balls. They were so aggressive and kind of jump switching that little screen in the middle of the floor on Alyssa Thomas, which made it hard for her to even get downhill. And to me, that was what really changed defensively. And it was the second quarter, and Becky Hammond talked about it. I don't know why they don't guard in the first quarter, but they really woke up in the second quarter and they outscored them 22-10. They built that lead at half, and then the third quarter was really just Jackie Young. And we were kind of talking before, and BMAC confirmed it was a franchise record for Jackie Young with 32 points in the postseason. But I mean, she was just really special. I mean, she had one move at the top of the key in the first half. She crossed over Okoa Makani and sliced down the lane and kind of held Westbeld off and finished at the rim. And it's just, she's been so special this playoffs, and to see her perform on this stage with so many eyes alongside who we already know and four-time MVP Asia Wilson is going to show up has been, again, just really fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's such a testament to Jackie Young's growth over the past few seasons. Like last time the Aces were in this situation where, they're winning in 2022 and 2023, it was a lot of Asia Wilson and Chelsea Gray. And like obviously like still Chelsea Gray still a huge factor, brings the experience, brings the calm, is able to, dish out the basketball. But at the same time, Jackie has just gone through such like a transformation over the past few seasons, and I think has really just built her confidence as a player, as a leader, as someone who is that number 2 option on a team. And I think it's just like so fun to see. It's very rare to have a team core kind of stick together like this, and it's not the exact same core given that they switched out Kelsey Plum, but you still kind of have Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young here, and to see the kind of transformation of that core over the past few seasons, and see Jackie just really, find, she was always strong and she always had that ability, but I think just like finding the confidence and being able to take those shots and knowing that like she is the option in those big moments, I think is just really fun to see. And I think, she's still just like climbing up. She's still really young, and pairing her with Asia Wilson, like you were saying before, like is like a big 2 that you can go with when it comes to future building, which I think is so great for the Aces going into this postseason where a lot of change is going to happen in the league inevitably. And I think maybe just trying to lock in on those 2 and hope to see whoever else kind of come back or who you can get in free agency, I think is a great plan for them. But yeah, I think I wanted to also talk about Jewell Loyd because she has been, I think, a factor in this playoffs, in the way that like we all know that Jewell Loyd has playoff experience, won 2 titles with Seattle. And for me, like when they brought in Jewell Loyd and it was like Jewell Loyd's the second option on this team, and then it didn't go as planned, like I went back to thinking, okay, when Jewell Loyd was the most successful, it was on a team where she was the number 3 option behind Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart. And the idea of kind of tailoring Jewell Loyd's current role to make it so that she is coming off the bench, being able to not have as much of the pressure on her to perform big every night, I think just kind of gives her the freedom to be able to just kind of operate in ways that work best for her, be able to get the ball in situations, be another option when Jackie or Asia, is being heavily defended. And I think Jewell Loyd might be the kind of player that, needs that in order to be able to play more freely, needs the kind of a little bit of the pressure off. And she's been like pretty steady. I think that was how you described it before we hopped on, was like, she hasn't been extremely good, but she also hasn't been terrible. Like she's just been steady. And I think on a playoff, especially a finals team, you need that experience of someone's like, okay, I know this, I know how this feels. I know what the situation's like. Let me go out there and just do what I do best and try to, contribute in the ways that I can and not put like a negative impact on this team. And I think that's kind of been Jewell's role in this series.
Absolutely. She's doing everything she can to help her team win, right?
Yeah.
And so she understands what's at stake, what they're trying to do. And the Indiana series, she was all over the boards in that game, that game 5 where they had many chances, offensive rebounds she was getting. And then in game 1, she was a good scorer alongside Dana Evans, which they absolutely needed. And then yesterday, I thought, again, just picked her moment. She's always good for those threes in the corner, but just really active defensively, rebounding the basketball. And so that's been really good for her in that role, like you said, just to see her kind of not have that pressure, but just to relax and be in that. And we've talked about it a lot this season, just with her going to the bench, being able to acclimate to the game a little bit more. And it's definitely really, really worked out well for them. And also, on Phoenix's end, I think just being more patient and moving basketball, that's really, I thought, where they got in trouble yesterday, was just kind of being stagnant. They took a lot of forced contested shots early in the shot clock, and they're just not at their best when they play that way. And so I expect to see some changes, for game 3 for them on the offensive end.
For sure. And I think so. Now we head to Phoenix. We're heading into game 3 and 4 in Phoenix. And, as much as I see a lot of people being like, oh, it's over, Vegas is going to win again, I would strongly suggest not having that frame of mind, given how 7-game series usually work, especially final series, given how important home court advantage is to both of these teams. And especially like Phoenix has like a wild home court advantage. And so I wouldn't, eulogize the fact that they are, the series might be over, et cetera, et cetera. Game 3 is always a huge turning point in 7-game series, because it's like, okay, can the other team kind of step up at home and put themselves on the board, or are we going to end up in an elimination situation for the rest of the series? So game 3 is huge. You already noted what you think Phoenix will do differently in game 3. And that will happen, I believe, Tuesday, tomorrow, BMAC?
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
I think it's Wednesday.
I should have looked at this before, and now I'm panicking.
I don't know. Let's see. I had the schedule up earlier. Hang on.
We got this. We got this all. Oh, BMAC's coming in.
Yeah. Let me put the scroll that was going at the bottom that told you.
Yeah, game 3 on Wednesday. Yeah.
This is what happens when you don't look at the scroll. Yeah, so game 3 is on Wednesday in Phoenix, so make sure to look at that. And I mean, if last week was any indication, we're going to have a big news week, so make sure to stay tuned into the Hoop Stats podcast. Follow us here wherever you're listening or watching, as well as on social media, Blue Sky, X, and Instagram, and subscribe to herhoopstats.com to get all of our newsletters sent to your email. As always, Brittany, it is a pleasure to talk hoops with you. I appreciate how well you were able to catch me up after I was away for the weekend. And it just proves that you can watch basketball and touch grass at the same time, which is a concept to some people. So I love it. Yeah. So, happy to be here. Great to see you, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. And I mean, BMAC is here now, so shout out BMAC.
I was wondering if you were just gonna leave me sitting here.
No, we're gonna leave you. We're gonna leave you as we do this outro. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again next time on the Her Hoop Stats podcast. Wow, Monday, can't talk.